Good evening, everyone. As we begin, I'll note that Councillor Wright has sent regrets, and I will ask everyone to please silence your cell phones and other electronic devices. And I'll remind Council that our procedure bylaw prescribes the use of technology during Council meetings. It is 6:30 p.m. I'll call this meeting to order, and I will begin with a formal territorial acknowledgement. As we begin our meeting, I acknowledge that we are gathered on lands that have been inhabited by Indigenous peoples from the beginning. We respectfully acknowledge that Mississauga and Anishinaabe have been the stewards of this place. As we hear the truths behind our shared stories, reconcile them with our past and with who we are today, we acknowledge that we are working toward right relations as good treaty people. In particular, we are thankful for our partnership with our neighbors from the Alderville First Nation. I have a motion from Councillor Fredis, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that Council approve the September 9th, 2024 planning meeting agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Members of Council, have you any declarations of pecuniary interest? And if so, please state the general nature thereof. And there are none noted. We have no delegations this evening, which brings us to our statutory public meeting with a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon. The Council move into the statutory public meeting September 9th, 2024 at 6:31 p.m. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. The Municipality of Brighton takes steps beyond the requirements of the Planning Act to engage the community in land use planning initiatives. The municipality also holds statutory public meeting on the planning matter and then receives a staff report with a recommendation on which Council will make a decision. Council depends on the community to provide input during this meeting for our decision. This input may be received in advance of the statutory public meeting by sending correspondence to the clerk's office and/or by making an oral submission to Council at the statutory public meeting. This will best inform Council on the land use planning matter prior to Council making our final decision. Recent statutory changes limit appeal rights to only the applicant and specified regulated persons. For details or information on the new appeal process, please visit the municipal website or contact the clerk's office. We have only one item in our statutory public meeting this evening. It is with regard to files B12 2024 and Z05 2024. Applicants Craig and Denise Williams. This is for a consent and zoning bylaw amendment application at 4 and 6 Bay Street. The purpose of this is with regard to consent and zoning bylaw applications. Mrs. Deck, by what method and on what date was notice of the consent and zoning bylaw amendment applications given?
Notice of the consent and zoning bylaw amendment applications were sent by mail on August 19th, 2024 to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property. Notice was also circulated to all the agencies as required under the Planning Act. In addition, a signed notice was also posted on the property.
Thank you, Mrs. Deck. And would you please explain the purpose and reason for the proposed consent and zoning bylaw amendment applications?
The purpose of consent application B12 2024 is to sever a 935 square meter or 0.23 acre portion of the property located at 6 Bay Street West and add it to the property located at 4 Bay Street West. The application will result in the retained lands located at 6 Bay Street West having a total lot area of approximately 453 square meters with 21.39 meters of frontage on Bay Street West. The parcel as enlarged located at 4 Bay Street West will result in a lot area of 2,432 square meters or 0.6 acres. No new development is being proposed as part of this application. The purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment Z05 2024 is to rezone the portion of the severed property to be added to 4th Bay Street West from the Urban Residential 1 Wave Uprush Zone and Urban Residential 1 Zone to the Highway Commercial Wave Uprush Zone and Highway Commercial Zone to ensure consistent zoning with the benefiting property. The zoning bylaw amendment application also serves to rezone portions of the benefiting property at 4 Bay Street West from the Highway Commercial Zone to the Highway Commercial Wave Uprush Zone to ensure consistency with the updated mapped flood hazard associated with Lake Ontario. The current zoning of the retained parcel at 6 Bay Street West is to remain as the Urban Residential 1 Wave Uprush Zone. As part of the site inspection for the application, it was identified that a dock along the Bay Street West road allowance is owned by the subject lands. The Bay Street West road allowance was identified as part of the old waterfront master plan with the Gosport redevelopment. Although never implemented, staff will be reviewing this road allowance as part of the transportation master plan. The encroachment agreement is an interim solution until further analysis of the Bay Street West road allowance is completed, and that encroachment agreement will be included as part of a subsequent council report for council's consideration.
Thank you, Mrs. Deck. Are there persons present who have questions or comments regarding the proposed consent and zoning bylaw amendment applications? Or on Zoom? Are there any questions or comments regarding the proposed consent and zoning bylaw applications from members of council? Councillor Fredis.
Through the chair to Mrs. Deck, I think I know the answer to this, but I just have to ask the question. Looking at page 18, I see this blue outline overlaying the aerial view. I'm assuming in my reading that when that was placed in there, it was perhaps not tweaked appropriately because it runs through the roof line of one unit and the roof line of the other. Should it not be pushed a little farther to the left to give me a better representation of the actual lots?
Mrs. Deck.
Through you, Mayor. Parcel fabric that we see that is from Lower Trent Conservation, but we do see a lot of shifted parcel fabric from MPAC data to our data to what they use at Lower Trent, which is likely MPAC data. Unfortunately, it's just difficult because there's these sort of minor adjustments that need to be made amongst most of the parcel fabric. We're seeing that a lot, that it just doesn't really look that accurate. Yes, the lot lines are certainly not accurate when you're looking at them overlaid on an aerial image.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of council? Mrs. Deck, any final comments?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Does council wish to make a decision this evening? Yes. I have a motion moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor Fredis, that council receive the staff report dated September 9th, 2024 regarding the subject lands for 4 and 6 Bay Street West, being consent application B12 2024 and zoning bylaw amendment application file number Z05 2024. And further, the council enacts a bylaw to rezone the severed portion of the lands to be added to 4 Bay Street West from urban residential 1 wave uprush zone and urban residential 1 zone to the highway commercial wave uprush zone and highway commercial zone, and rezone a portion of the benefiting lands at 4 Bay Street West from the highway commercial zone to the highway commercial wave uprush zone. And further, that council grants provisional consent to application B12 2024, subject to the following conditions. Each condition shall be fulfilled no later than 2 years from the date of the mailing of the decision. That application for zoning bylaw amendment Z05 2024 is finally approved. Confirmation from the applicant's solicitor that the severed and benefiting lands will merge on title. The solicitor for the applicant shall submit an undertaking to the municipality to the following effect. I hereby personally undertake to prepare and register an application to consolidate parcels for those lands being the severed land herein and those lands being the benefiting lands herein, and provide to the municipality the registered application to consolidate parcels as soon as possible after registration of the severance, transfer, and designation of the new PIN to the severed lands. That subsections 3 and 5 of Section 50 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, shall apply to any subsequent conveyance of or transaction involving the conveyed lands. At the applicant's cost, sufficient land be conveyed by registered transfer to the municipality of Brighton along the frontage of the severed and benefiting lands for widening of the road allowance to a minimum of 10 meters from the center line along Bay Street West and Baldwin Street, or their planned widths inclusive of any associated traveled areas, shoulders, or drainage works. At the applicant's cost, sufficient unencumbered land be conveyed by registered transfer to the municipality of Brighton to establish a visibility triangle of 6 meters along Bay Street West by 6 meters along Baldwin Street from the existing corner property bar. The conveyances referenced in condition F and G above shall be clear of any liens or encumbrances, all to the satisfaction of the manager of operations. That the applicant applies for and is approved for an entrance permit to relocate the existing entrance at 6 Bay Street West to provide sufficient clearance from the proposed property line. That the proposed driveway relocation conforms to Lower Trent Conservation regulatory policies for development within the shoreline flooding hazard, and a permit is issued for its installation from LTC. The OLS indicate in writing to the Department of Planning and Development that no encroachments of driveways or municipal services will result from the lot addition conveyances. That the owners of the benefiting and retained parcels enter into an encroachment agreement with the municipality in order to permit private docks on municipal property, or the docks are removed. All taxes on each of the lots be paid up to date prior to the issuance of a certificate of official. A digital copy of a registrable survey for the lots and the appropriate deed transfer be prepared and deposited with the municipal clerk. The surveyor deposit with the municipality a geospatial data file of the surveyed parcel fabric with respect to the severed and retained lands submitted to the satisfaction of the municipality. And the owner provides to the municipality a registrable description on a deed conveying the severed lands for use for the issuance of a certificate of official for consent. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. And that ends our statutory public meeting with a motion moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that Council move out of the statutory public meeting September 9th, 2024 at 6:41 p.m. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. That brings us to planning and development reports. The only report is with regard to the Provincial Policy Statement 2024. Director Walsh, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Nothing further, Mayor.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Fredis, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that Council receive for purposes of information the staff report dated September 9th, 2024 regarding the recently adopted Provincial Policy Statement 2024. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion is carried. We'll move to items for information purposes. Director Walsh, we've read the tracking information. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Nothing further, Mayor.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that Council receive the application tracking as information. Is there any discussion? Councillor Rowley?
Thank you, Mayor. As far as tracking the applications, do we track as per number of units per application as well?
Director?
Not within that table. That table is really more status of timing and stages of approval. When we get to the further details of each application, then we can track those numbers, but they will need to be tracked for purposes of residual sanitary capacity and other such purposes. So that's a good question. Thank you.
Thank you both. Anything further from members of council? Those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. We have nothing listed under unfinished business, which brings us to bylaws. I have a motion, and the bylaw is with regard to the zoning bylaw amendment Z05-2024, which we just discussed in the statutory public meeting. I have a motion moved by Councillor Fredis, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that Council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw under the provisions of Section 34 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 to amend Bylaw 140-2002 as otherwise amended of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton, as it applies to the lands located at 4 Bay Street West and 6 Bay Street West, legally described as Plan 28, Lot 20, and Part Lot 19, S.S. Price Street, and Plan 28, Lot 2, Part Lot 1, Brighton. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion is carried. Brings us to question period. If there's anyone in the gallery that has a question with regard to anything on tonight's agenda, please step forward. And our Zoom friend left. Okay. So that brings us to our closed session matter. I will read the closed session motion. Should council choose to agree to go into closed session, we will take a 10-minute recess as we transition into the closed session. I'll remind people watching this session on YouTube that we will be ending the YouTube live stream for the duration of tonight's council meeting at that point. I have a motion moved by Councillor Fredis, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council resolve itself into closed session September 9th, 2024 at 6:45 p.m. pursuant to the Ontario Municipal Act. RSO 2001 is amended subsection 239(2)(c), a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, potential purchase of land. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. We are recessed until 6:58 p.m.